Sorry.
Well, this is a normal show then for us because we're just terrible at this professionalism stuff. Anyway,
Did
guys,
you
we're
go live
live.
in your end?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
We are live on all platforms right now.
Guys, WrestleMania 20 was known basically for two big things. One of them, of course, is Chris Benoit finally become a world champion in WWE. And the second one was how Brock Lesnar wanted to leave the company and Goldberg wanted to leave the company. And the fans got into this that same weekend and completely hijacked their match. Now, 16 years later, coming into WrestleMania, Goldberg is your Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar is your WWE Champion. At WrestleMania 25, 5 years later, coming into the show, The Miz and John Morrison were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. They faced Carlito and Primo. Excuse me. No, that's right, Carlito and Primo in a unification match, which they lost. Now, 11 years later, WrestleMania 36, The Miz and John Morrison are coming into WrestleMania as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions.
Are they facing Primo and Epico?
Boy, wouldn't that be something. Guys, I do this rant at least once a quarter. And I'm not going to tell you what to like in pro wrestling, but I am going to tell you that there's more out there to watch than WWE. You don't have to watch the old timers show. You don't have to watch the things that never changes. You don't have to watch the organization that doesn't trust you to buy into the new stars and enjoy great pro wrestling. There's a reason Jeff and I don't watch that shit anymore except for the big events. Yeah, we'll be watching WrestleMania. Yeah, we watch the Royal Rumble. But by and large, that company is dead to us. And the reason why, we're on Tuesdays now instead of Mondays, happened this weekend. Not only did AEW put on their first pay-per-view of the year, featuring Jon Moxley versus Chris Jericho, featuring the match of the year of the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Not only did we get a great character performance by Darby Allin, and MJF getting his revenge on that bastard Cody Rhodes, but we also got two outstanding Ring of Honor shows from the company that is back from the goddamn dead. Jeff, what do you got?
Well, first of all, I'm Jeff. He's Zanman. He forgot that again. Secondly, guys, we're coming to you live on multitude of platforms, live on Spreaker.com. We're also on lordsofpainradio.net and our own YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kingdom of Honor. If you're listening to us on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe button, ring the notification bell. We do appreciate it because it does help us out in the long run. Secondly, just on a side note, programming, because we are not even close to professionals and you are sounding a little bit echoey with your new headphones. Just, I don't know if you have to adjust anything or not, but I will
adjust while you talk.
I'm actually really glad that we have moved to Tuesday nights. And the main reason I'm glad for it is because we're not going up against the juggernaut, which is WWE. Because, like you said, and Shane and I kind of feel the same, and it's not so much because they don't occasionally put on good wrestling shows. It's not because they don't have the talent that can do what needs to be done. And by God, they have some of the best talent in the world. AJ Styles is still one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And every time I get a chance to actually see him, I'm in awe at what he does. He's, 42, 43? And he still blows me away with what he does. Seth Rollins, at times, can be the best wrestler in the world. You've got other guys, especially on the NXT brand. The problem is their production value, their nonsensical storylines, the fact that they push agendas that don't necessarily make sense or resonate with the audiences. That's the reason why I don't watch that product, and that's why I'm glad we're on Tuesday nights as opposed to Monday nights, because let's face it, they're still a juggernaut. They are still the flag bearers, and they're when people think of wrestling, they think of WWE. So a lot of people are watching Raw, and we don't discuss Raw. It's nice to be on opposite of Raw because we can talk about the things that really matter, which is AEW that put on a hell of a show, much better than I thought they were going to, and Ring of Honor that, like you said, is back from the dead. We were in January after watching Final Battle, in December, after watching Final Battle, ready to cancel our subscriptions. After this weekend's performance by them, I'm renewing. There's no way I'm not going to renew after this. This was a hell of a 2-day show for them. You back with us, Shane? Or did we lose you completely?
I think I'm back with you now.
All right,
you hear
there
me?
you are. Yep, I got you now.
Okay, excellent. But it doesn't feel like I'm coming in on Spreaker, so I don't think the audience can hear me. So let me switch this back to stereo first. Now, no, they still can't hear me. What the hell is going on?
We've got you on YouTube, so, and we'll have you on Patreon later.
I have no idea what's going on with this. Okay. Well, I'm not echoing my own ear anymore, so that's a good thing, I think.
Oh, good. Well, if it doesn't work, we can always...
Go ahead.
If we need to, we can always download you from Patreon and YouTube, and bring the show up later.
Am I not echoing for you anymore?
Nope, you're fine for me. You're back to the way you were.
Excellent. Let me try this one more thing here. All right. Default communication device. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Can Spreaker hear me? No, but who cares? All right. So.
And again, we are not professionals. We don't know what we're doing. We just like to talk about wrestling. So.
Yeah, I have no idea why it's doing what it's doing, but I'm here. So, try one more thing, and if that doesn't work, then we'll give up on here. So
we'll say fuck.
How
it
about
and just
now?
go with it.
There we go. Now it's showing up on there.
And I'm a little disappointed because you told me to make sure that we weren't PG rated for your rant, and there was nothing in your rant.
Oh, not for my rant necessarily.
Oh,
I was going to discuss something that happened, but there's definitely something that happened on Revolution that I can't discuss without using curse words. So.
Well, it's a good thing I went on PG today.
I guess so. A lot of times we want to get the negative out of the way, so I'm gonna say this. I hated Chris Jericho's entrance at Revolution. At first, I was like, a choir, really don't care. That's really dumb. And then I started thinking about it while they were doing it, and I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, this is really smart, because this way the audience can't really sing along with his entrance. And since he's supposed to be a heel, that's going to kind of throw them up. He's not going to get that kind of pop. But then what did he do? What did they do right after the choir was done singing? They played his damn entrance again.
They started it from the beginning.
What the hell?
I thought that
was the dumbest thing I've seen with a special entrance.
I thought I saw that too, and I was thinking the whole time the choir's singing, okay, when's he gonna make his entrance? When's he gonna make his entrance? Then they quit and his music started over from scratch. I'm like, what was the point? You guys just paid probably $100,000 for this choir, and they didn't matter. They literally didn't matter. All they did was fill time.
Unless it was a charity thing where where they were giving to a church or something like that, maybe to a children's charity that the choir sponsors or something. Yeah, it was a bad move.
I will say this.
I thought it was terrible.
Whoever that chick was that was singing the lead, man, she's got some pipes. Just amazing. I actually was buying into the choir singing because I enjoyed her vocals so much. But it was all for naught once they started the actual theme.
Yeah, pretty terrible.
But man, she's got some
Um,
pipes. Congratulations to her, by the way. Just here's a mini clap. Yes, I enjoyed the choir's performance. I thought whoever was singing that lead was just absolutely amazing.
and since we're talking about that match, let's talk about
Do we have
the
to?
results of that match.
Oh,
You and I were pretty adamant last Tuesday that, and Wednesday, I think both actually, that John Moxley should not leave as the AEW World Champion. But I got to tell you, after the way the announcers were selling it, where they were saying, welcome to the ride, climb on board, um, it's going to be fun, and hearing John Moxley talk about it, I'm kind of on board. Um, I feel like this could be a, not another version of Steve Austin during the Attitude Era, but certainly along those same lines. And I'm looking forward to see. I shouldn't say I'm fully on board, but I'm definitely have an open mind to see if they're able to entertain me the way that Austin did during that, 96 to 98 time frame.
I don't think they will because I don't think he has the kind of antithesis that Austin had. Austin was fighting against the corporation, and I don't see that out of Moxley right now. There was a time when he was going into, Tony Khan's office after AEW went off the air and arguing with him about why am I being put on a dark show and all that stuff. But the reality is, he's not fighting against Tony Khan. He's not the anti-hero that everybody wanted. He is the hero that everyone wanted. And I'm at mixed. First of all, the match, and we'll get to that in a second. But as far as the outcome, we initially said when Jericho won it that it was the smart move to put it on Jericho because he brought the name value. But Jericho should have dropped it, 2 months, maybe 3 months later. Jericho held that title for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a little bit too long. I'm thinking, I personally think he should have dropped it a little bit sooner. I just don't think right now is the right time to drop it, simply because I think there was more to this story between him and Moxley.
I think there was too. There was a hero's journey, but it could have been longer, especially with a cheap way for Jericho to leave with the championship, like getting disqualified, getting counted out, some kind of a no contest. I think would have been fine. And actually, one thing I mentioned on Wednesday was I don't like the look of the first two AEW World Champions being former WWE World Champions. You know.
Especially because they've got the name value of being. I mean, there are still people that refer to Moxley as Dean Ambrose. Chris
Right.
Jericho, that's it's not his real name, but that's the name that he goes by. So and he has for 25 years. So it's a little bit different. Had it been, somebody else from the WWE roster, maybe like a Brody Lee or someone like that, it wouldn't have made the same impact that it did now. So,
Well, Brody Lee was never WWE World Champion either.
no, and that's what I'm saying. If it had been an ex-WWE guy like Brody Lee, who had come in and beat Jericho, that would have been a whole different story than being Moxley,
Who was WWE champion, who was the focal point of WWE programming for, ever since Jericho left.
Also, I think that there was more interesting stories to be told than John Moxley beating Chris Jericho.
There was more interest.
I think the most interesting story, honestly, and you're gonna laugh when I say this, but considering the kind of bond that they've shown over the last few weeks, I think the more interesting story would have been if Moxley couldn't beat Jericho and then Darby Allin did beat Jericho.
I think it's too early. I'm not going to laugh at that because I think I see where you're going, and I like that kind of thinking. But I think Darby Allin as champion right now would do more harm than good, because it would be a lot like throwing the belt on, I hate to say this, but Tessa Blanchard. It would just take away from everything they've built up to this point. Does that make sense? I just don't think Darby Allin is ready.
A little bit, yeah.
I just don't think Darby Allin is ready for that spotlight and ready to carry the company. Not taking anything away from Tessa and what she accomplished, I just don't think that Tessa is the right person to carry the company, just like I don't think Darby Allin would be. Now, Darby Allin in 6 months, that could be a completely different story, but Darby Allin right now, he hasn't been built to that level yet. And I'm not saying that for just him. I'm saying that for Adam Page. I don't think would have been there. I don't think Guevara would have been there. I don't think, there's a handful of people that can be in that main event spot if given the right build, but they're just not there yet. And Darby Allin,
right?
To me,
but I mean, if you take that point of view, then Moxley is one of only 3 guys that really could have taken the title from Jericho.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of their main problems right now, is that they've got a handful of guys that are main event quality, and then the rest are mid-carders trying to build up to that status.
Right. I mean, you could possibly say there's a handful. I think there's a total of 4. And I say that because Cody can't wrestle for the championship.
Well, yeah, and
as we've said multiple times.
Storyline, there's storyline.
If he could wrestle, then there'd be a solid handful.
Right.
But right now I think there's 4, unless you're going to include Jake Hager in there, and Jake Hager, of course, is one of Jericho's guys anyway.
I mean, if you look at it, Pac, Moxley, Cody, Jericho
himself.
And who else? It's like those 4.
You're forgetting Kenny.
I thought I said Kenny.
No, you said Pac, Moxley,
Jericho, Kenny. Okay, you're right. I didn't say Kenny.
Jericho, Cody, and Kenny is who you missed.
Yeah.
But then there's also, Hager's already a former world champion, so I think you'd have to include him in there. So.
You would have to, but at the same point, I mean, but it seems like right now we've got 3 or 4 top contenders, and then the rest are just they're just there. They're kind of maybe upper mid-carders. You could easily work them in, but right now the biggest reason for Jericho to lose the belt is because there's only 2 top faces, and he beat one and lost to the other. So now you've got a good 6-month run out of Moxley, because he can have the rematch against Jericho and then face Pac. And hopefully in another 6 months, they'll be able to build up another top contender for that belt.
Yeah, there's 3 top faces, and he's beaten 2 of them.
Right, 3. Oh yeah, Kenny. He hasn't beat. Well, he beat Kenny to get the chance to win the belt.
Right, that's what I mean. He beat Kenny, and then the other guy that they were building up for months, he beat him too cleanly.
Yep. And
that's Scorpio Sky.
Well, and he also beat Cody.
He's beaten Scorpio Sky. He's beaten Darby Allin. He's beaten Cody.
But as far as the legitimate main eventers, he beat Kenny to get the spot to win the title in the first place. Then he beat Page. He beat Cody. So the only other guy that's believable as a champion is Moxley on the face side. Outside of Moxley, there's Pac. So now we've got Moxley as the champion. Now we've got, in 3 months he faces Jericho for the rematch, and then he faces Pac.
I hope not.
And then he faces Pac. We're 6 months out. Maybe in 6 months they can build up another guy to come in there and take that belt. Because now,
if he faces Jericho again in 3 months, that'll be fine for me. But if he faces him again in like 2 weeks on Dynamite or something, that's going to be a bit of overkill.
No,
I think Jericho should start just sending his minions at him first, right?
Right.
So I mean, get Sammy a shot, get Jake a shot, so on and so forth.
The only thing I didn't like, and I mean, AEW this entire revolution was kind of plotting. It reminded me more of an NJPW show because none of the matches were that high flying caliber that we expect out of these types of shows. It seemed like every match just kind of took its time. It told its story. It did what it needed to do, and then the main event was no different. And I totally lost my train of
But isn't
thought.
isn't that what we want from AEW though? I mean, you and I kind of thought coming in that AEW we were going to kind of get a American version of New Japan with AEW, and we haven't really gotten that so far. But this pay-per-view, like you said, was a lot like that.
It was the closest to it. I mean, I think it dropped the ball on Darby versus Sammy. I think that could have been. I think if they would have sprinkled in that 15-minute brawl that they had before the actual match and sprinkled that in throughout the match instead, would have resonated a little bit more. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great, the entire performance, but the match itself was terrible. But I think if they had taken maybe some of that outside stuff,
Wait! You can't say that. You and I don't go that way. You and I are talking about the entire presentation, and we take the entire presentation in whole. It was great.
oh yeah.
So what do you mean?
I'm taking
What do you mean the match was terrible?
the match itself from bell to bell, because the bell didn't start till 15 minutes in. After the table shot,
I think saying it was terrible is I think you were saying it was terrible is quite a stretch.
yeah.
It wasn't
You
as
could
great
be
as the
right.
rest of it, but it wasn't terrible.
I think if you look at the 7 or 8 minutes that they performed in the ring, from bell to bell, wasn't what we expected. I'm not. You're probably right. Saying it's terrible is probably a stretch. I mean, it had its moments. I really like Sammy, just attacking as soon as that bell rang. That was a nice way to play off of what had happened before. But I felt like if they had taken all of that outside interference and all the table spots and the chair spots and all that stuff and incorporated it slightly into the match, like 2 minutes outside the ring, 2 minutes in, I think would have been a better overall performance. But if you're looking at bell to bell, that was a C match. Maybe a 2-star
But I'm
match.
not looking at. But I'm not.
But if
But
you
I'm not
look at
looking at
if
Bill
you
to
look
Bill.
at
I
the
never
en-
do.
if you look at the entire performance, it was maybe a 4. I'm not going to give that a 5. Not a chance.
No, no, it's probably. I would say it was probably like 3.75.
Right.
But still, I mean, but I mean that's not bad for the second match on a card where you're still trying to build momentum. I mean, we're not going to. I mean, you were probably coming in expecting them to completely steal the show.
And they had
And
the
I
talent
just
to
don't
do
think
so.
I just don't think they do. But I don't think that was their job.
No.
You know, not everybody. You know, stealing the show. Is not necessarily something that you should always do.
No, you're right.
You know what I'm saying?
And when you look at Wrestle Kingdom matches, you get a great performance out of Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay, and that doesn't steal the show because it's not meant to. And that's kind of the way Sammy and Darby were. I think that their match overall, from my perspective, would have made more sense and got a higher rating had the violence been sprinkled throughout as opposed to the violence taking up 15 minutes before the match. That's just my personal feelings.
And I think that when John Moxley and Juice Robinson did that, you shot all over it.
Right, they did the exact same thing, and I hated it because
But they didn't. They were wrestling outside when the match was actually going on.
Yeah,
and then they would come back in the ring, and then they go back on the outside, and you absolutely hated it. So
my issue with that,
I think you've got like a very narrow window of where this stuff makes sense for you.
a grudge match is a grudge match.
Mm-hmm.
And Moxley versus Juice wasn't a grudge match.
No,
But
it was. We just
Sam-
didn't see the build up. We just didn't see the lead into it. If you listen to the backstory of the announcers, is they had a grudge from back when they both worked for NXT.
Right, I didn't see that. So to me it wasn't. So that's why I didn't like. Plus I was also looking for something different from Moxley, not just craziness.
Show don't tell, right?
Kinda, yeah.
So let's talk about a match. Go ahead.
And for me, I want to get back to the main event. The biggest, like, I loved the match. I loved the overall production of it. I love the fact that Darby started the match and they went outside and that 6:30 through the table was amazing. The fact that Sammy attacked as soon as the bell rang and Darby was able to fight his way back. I love the overall performance. I just, to me, it was two separate situations. So I didn't necessarily love the match. I didn't necessarily love the beforehand. But when you put the two together, it was amazing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm also going to just point out that if they had done it the way that you suggested, then basically we got a singles version of the tag team title match.
Yeah, and that's when you see that match happen later on, it's a whole different issue.
Right, but my point is that that made this one unique to the other stuff that was on the card.
One thing I want to point out, because I can sense us kind of moving on from it, but I felt like, and maybe it's just me, but I felt like Moxley's reveal that he could see the whole time was a little too late into the match. I felt like he needed to do a little bit more after he revealed that he could see the whole time, other than just go ahead and hit the paradigm.
Oh, I feel exactly the same way. I don't know
good.
if you so they were running out of time or what the deal was, but he did talk for longer than I think they expected at the end of it too. But no, I feel like he should have done almost like a Roosh. I think
Right.
I felt like he should have thrown Jericho out of the ring, thrown him into the barricade a few times, thrown him through the table, just kicked his ass completely.
After he revealed that he could see.
Right after he revealed that he could see. He should have just thrown the eye patch down and then gone completely to town on Jericho, not just kicked him and hit the paradigm shift.
Right. I mean, the way that he kind of missed those spots and ducked and whatever, it didn't make sense because his supposed one good eye was still covered. So he couldn't see. He couldn't see out of one eye. His other good eye was still covered, but yet he's ducking and dodging all these moves, and then he reveals, hey, I can actually see out of this eye. Well, who the fuck cares? It was covered. That doesn't make sense, John. And then he turns around, he kicks him, hits a paradigm shift, and a match. I just felt like after his reveal, there should have been a little more violence out of him, and actually showing that, okay, I can see greatly now, and this is why I'm winning.
Also, without us seeing more, then we kind of wonder like what was the point of that? Because, were you rope-a-doping the smaller, older guy? That makes no sense. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Sure. It made Jericho like quote unquote like overconfident, but he also was fighting against the entire inner circle, not just Chris Jericho. So wouldn't you want both eyes to do that with?
Well, to me, it just didn't make sense. If you could see this whole time, why would you hide that for a long game that really didn't make sense, because all you needed was one move to end the match and win the title? It just didn't make sense to me. It was that, and the fact that they really need to work on their choreography a little bit more, because there were a couple of times where they caught things on camera that we never should have seen. Like MJF coming out from under the ring where he was blading himself, and then during the Moxley-Jericho match, Moxley beating on his cut to get it to bleed again.
Mm-hmm.
There was
also, and just like we talked about with Johnny Gargano versus not Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole versus Tommaso Ciampa. To me, this one had a little bit too much of like an Attitude Era style match to it.
Yes.
And not in a good way.
Yes,
So it was slow. It was slow and plotting at times, and too much. I don't know. There was just too much to it. They overbooked it a little bit, but really it's more like this, like the pieces don't all fit together.
I agree.
one match that really surprised me and kind of made me a fan out of somebody I didn't get before I actually saw him in a singles match was Pac versus Orange Cassidy.
Yep. I was gonna
You know,
say that one
you know,
next.
you and I, like, we've kind of been like, I don't think we've quite gotten the Orange Cassidy character, and that's just because I don't have much experience with him. I mean, I think we saw him in a battle royal at one of the shows WrestleMania weekend last year, but we haven't actually seen him, in a singles match, and then seeing how he kind of, taunts his opponents into attacking him, and then he like has bursts of energy was pretty damn cool.
I was gonna say this might have been. It wasn't the match of the night, but it was definitely one of the more entertaining matches. Mainly because I did not expect that, and it came right down to that beginning when they did their little wrist lock tie up thing, and he flipped Pac over, and Pac sold it like a champ. He sold it like he was all in on this, and this was one of the better performances out of Pac. So I mean, it's one of those few matches where everything about it I just absolutely loved.
Yeah, I think it came out of nowhere for us, I think. And that, and you know what? I've never seen a guy counter a hip lock into an arm drag without being able, with his hands in his pockets. That was amazing.
Yeah, to see the him do the hip throw with his hands in his pockets, just using his elbow. Everything about that was great. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorites.
Yeah, it was a little sad for me that the role of Rey Fenix in this show was to come out and run interference for Pac, because here we are, one of the best wrestlers on the planet, and he's out there doing a kick, and he's out there maybe for a total of 45 seconds.
It didn't make sense. I mean, is there some kind of tie-in with Pac and Lucha Brothers? Are they?
I think they've been a 6-man tag team a couple of times, but that's pretty much it.
But are they friends? Are they now a new stable? What's going on with them? Are they going to be? Because having that mid-card stable would actually be nice for the mid-card, to see these guys kind of beat the shit out of everybody.
I guess we'll have to see going forward if that's the case. But yeah, it was a little bit bizarre, definitely. And I'm not aware of an issue between Lucha Brothers and Best Friends either, so which made it even odder. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. Sorry, in the middle of something.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, I really hope there's something to come out of it, because otherwise Lucha Brothers running out to get involved in the match and to take on a tag team they've never really faced is kind of a missed opportunity, I guess. So we'll have to see where that storyline goes from here. But I hate to say it, but I think honestly these two might have put on my favorite match of the night.
Speaking, well, it's not my favorite match of the night, but it's probably my second favorite.
Yeah, I guess you're right, because of the tag match was still so good.
Speaking of tag teams, what happened to the Dark Order match versus SCU? Was that on the pre-show or something? Because I didn't see the pre-show.
Yeah, it was, and Christopher Daniels comes out dressed as the Exalted One, then reveals himself and turns on the Dark Order. So he's not the Exalted One.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Bad overbooking, basically, is what it amounted to.
But yesterday was March 2nd, and the day before that was March 1st, which was the last day Matt Hardy was under contract at WWE. So
right. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. It was kind of an odd. It was just done weird. I guess I wasn't a fan of it, to be honest.
I don't think I would have been either. Let's see, what else did we have on this card? We had a pretty darn good tag team, or a pretty good darn good women's match, I thought. It was short, But I thought Riho versus I'm not Riho, but Nyla Rose versus Chris Statlander was pretty good.
Yeah, it was, and this was the Chris Statlander I like, not that what we saw in Dynamite a couple of weeks ago, where she was booping everybody and just weird. I actually
booping everybody. That's a funny term.
well, that's what she was doing, and
I know it's still funny though.
She she was sloppy at times, but a lot of that's because she's only really been a pro wrestler for a couple of years. I mean, we badmouth Britt all the time for it, but the reality is she's only a couple of years in, and so is Chris Statlander, and Chris Statlander seems to be light years ahead of Britt Baker, or Britt Green, or Chelsea Baker, whatever we're calling her.
Well, you call her whatever you want. I'm going to call her Chelsea Baker, though.
Okay. It was sloppy at times. There were a couple times where it felt like they were moving in slow motion. But the reality is, this was a really good match with two really good performers in it. And as much as I want to hate on the Galaxy's Greatest Wrestler type thing, I was not mad at this at all.
No, me neither. And I thought, and like you said, she's only been wrestling for 3 years. I think Nyla's only been wrestling for about 3 years too, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, these are two very inexperienced women in a division, that has been growing. I think growing, and not great, but growing. And I think they did a good job representing it. I thought it was really good. And one of the best matches I think that they actually can put on right now. I think Chris Statlander, as I've said before, is either the best or the second best woman in the women's division. I know you're going to say, what about Allie? But Allie is a valet. She has not wrestled a match in like 5 months or something.
Anymore. Yeah, she doesn't count anymore. She's right. A valet.
And as far as I can tell, for the last month, there's no Nightmare Collective anymore either. So,
nope.
And Nyla's getting better. I mean, Nyla's getting better in quickly, I think, but still, to me, the best two women in the division are Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida. So, I think if next up we get Shida versus Nyla Rose, I'll be very happy. Although it'll probably be your girl, Big Swole.
Oh,
Bianca Swole.
No. Ugh. I might boycott the entire show if that's what happens.
Was she also on the pre-show? Because I thought she was supposed to have a match on this card too.
There was only the from what I heard about the pre-show. I didn't actually watch it, but from what I heard, it was only SCU versus Dark Order.
Oh, okay. I thought you watched it. Okay.
No,
and then Dustin versus Swagger happened.
Which I guess as far as a lead-in match goes, it wasn't bad.
But it was a weird choice.
Yeah, I feel like the wrong guy came out on top. I feel like it was a bad choice to lead the show.
Wait. How many times have you complained on this show about a person having their first match and losing? And now Jake Hager has his first match and wins, and you're saying he should have lost.
Every time, except for the fact that it literally, in the 3 grudge matches, 2 out of 3 lost. 2 out of 3 that were supposed to get their wins, and it just happened to be both the Rhodes brothers, lost.
Cody had to lose.
Well, yeah, because he had been made up to be this untouchable force up until then. But I don't feel like Dustin should have lost. Cody, the way they built it up is we all felt like Cody was going to win this match. Just because of the way everything was built up. And they got us the swerve, and they got us, MJF winning, which was the nice swerve and probably the best thing they could have done. But I feel like one of the Rhodes brothers should have won their little feud.
Why?
Where do we go from here, though?
Well,
If we're going
they
long
both
term,
lost, so they both have a longer hero's journey to do, like we both feel they should have done with John Moxley. So I don't see why you're saying that they one of them had to win or should have won.
to me, I just felt like one of them should have won it. One of them should have gotten the better of their little feud.
Well, Darby Allin got the better of his feud.
Which I didn't mind, to be honest with you. As much as
I'm just right. I mean, but if we look at it logically, right? The blood feuds coming in were Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara, John Moxley versus Chris Jericho was for the title, but it was also a blood feud, and then the two Rose feuds. So in two of them, the people got their revenge, and two of them they didn't. That's pretty much how life goes, is 50-50, right?
I felt like the Cody, or I'm sorry, not Cody, MJF, and that one I didn't care about, but it felt to me like Darby, or oh my god, Dustin versus Swagger should have gone to Dustin, just because of the revenge factor. You broke my arm, you destroyed my face on the last episode of Dynamite and everything. To me, it felt like that should have gone the other way. And I'm not saying I'm upset about it. Great, I want to see these two again because they put on a hell of a match. And right now, I feel like that's really the only type of opponent that Swagger can have. So I'm kind of okay with it. But at the same time, it would have been nice to see him win the feud because it just was time for that feud to be done.
Well, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me. So, if Dustin beats Swagger, then where do we go from there? Dustin is the older vet.
Maybe I'm
Dustin
still
is the
caught
older
up
50.
in the fact that the beginning of AEW Dynamite was Adam Page against Jack Swagger, Hagar, whatever the hell his name is.
What?
Remember when it was Adam Page fighting Hagar to the back all the time at the end of every Dynamite, and probably for the first 2 months of the show?
I think you're super exaggerating if that's the case, because no, I do not remember.
No, the feud was actually, and we were wondering when we were going to get a Page versus Hagar showdown, and then all of a sudden
That's
Page.
Oh, that's right. I would say it was a couple of weeks, not a couple of months.
But all of a sudden Page quits the Elite and he goes off on this other storyline, and that one just got dropped.
That's true, but to me, I guess Hager beating the 50-year-old man and getting put over makes a lot more sense than the 50-year-old man getting one over on Hager.
Except for the fact that Hager is 48.
He's not freaking 48. He's not been wrestling anywhere close to as long as.
He's not a young guy,
Rhodes
though.
is.
He can't be that young. He's got to be in his mid-40s.
He's younger than me and you.
No, I don't think that.
Yeah, he's probably 36,
name.
37. Hisname.
What?
I just spelled his name for you. Hisname.
Is it Jack Hagar or is it Jake? What?
I'm looking it up right now. He's 37. I said he was 37 or 36. He's 37. So there.
Lies. I can't even spell his name, so I don't know. Oh, he's from Perry, Oklahoma.
He shares a birthday with my brother, actually. He was born 3 years after my brother, but on the same date. Same day
All
of the
right,
year.
fine. He's
March
still a
20.
kid.
He's still a kid, did you say?
Yeah, well, technically, he's a good 10 years younger than me. 9 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if he's
Definitely a kid compared to Dustin.
Well, all right, fine.
You win this one, you bastard. Wait, Dustin's only 50.
You know, like you said about Cody and MJF. If you don't mind moving on to that, you said they swerved us coming in, and I'll say I agree with that to a point. But when the match started, I was like, you know what, MJF has to win this. So
I loved his robe, by the way.
You loved what?
His Burberry robe that he wore.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And the fact that he had that ring in his shorts the whole time was another thing that just was like, okay, that is one of the greatest heel swerves I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny when Tony said, well, maybe Wardlow gave it to him. Like, when? When could that have happened?
Exactly.
And why wouldn't you have caught it on camera if he did? No, he had it in his tights the entire time.
The fact that he had it in his tights the whole time and waited until after he got cut open from a toenail and got beat down that long before he actually used it is one of the better heel performances ever.
Yeah. And then instead of just pinning him after he hit him with it, then he does that bounce off the ropes and that like flop on top of him.
Yep. Yeah, there was. And what I mean by the best heel performances ever is a lot of times when a heel can take that advantage when they're losing, they take it. So the fact that he had that in his back pocket the entire time and he waited until the absolute last moment, 25 minutes into the match, after he'd gotten beaten pillar to post, he didn't go for that ring right away and get the knockout. They told their story. He legitimately tried to beat Cody by every other means necessary, and then when he couldn't, he reverted back to his like, okay, I got this in my back pocket. To me, that's
and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing with it is Cody beat himself.
Yep.
The announcers can be all indignant. Oh, MJF cheated, but Cody was also arrogant. He hit 2 crossroads. He chose not to go for the cover. He chose to try to punish MJF one more time, and he lost because of it.
Right.
Which is also a great heel thing because the best heels are the ones that believe that they're in the right, and here Cody is clearly to me in the wrong because he's too arrogant and he doesn't go for the win when he should have.
And we have to talk about his tattoo.
Oh my God!
Just
as long as I don't have to look at it, I can talk about it.
It should have been about 3 inches lower. There's nothing I hate more than a tattoo.
And 2 inches further into his body.
Yeah, okay, I'll give it that.
It is terrible.
I'm not a fan of the neck tattoo in general, but once it starts reaching the face, then I'm like, oh, come on, dude, you can never cover that shit up. Literally.
Right, exactly.
You're a multi-billionaire, I get it. You're living off you've got your dad's money and your family money, and then you've got your own company. Fine, I get it. But at some time, you have to look like a professional. And when you have a tattoo on your face, you can't look like a professional. I'm sorry, maybe I'm old school.
No, you're right. And the same thing with the neck. I mean, you've got to wear the turtleneck to cover that shit up. So,
right.
and also here's the thing is he is one of the biggest fan favorites in the second biggest wrestling company in North America, and that is not a good thing to be a role model to kids about.
No.
Where kids, if kids want to emulate him, they're going to find themselves being prejudiced against applying for jobs and moving up in companies and all that kind of stuff. It's really a bad look in multiple ways.
Well,
and
it's fine.
And just so the audience knows, I texted Jeff. Jeff actually was a little bit ahead of me on the show, but he actually went to bed before I did that the night we were watching it, and I texted him, that better be face paint. And I don't think he realized what I was talking about until he actually watched the show.
I had no clue. When you said that, I'm like, what? I thought, and then the funniest part is when I was watching it, the tattoo didn't click. when I was watching it, I was thinking maybe it was the blood on MJF, because with his tan, the way that it is, it did not look like natural blood.
Right.
And I'm still blown away that a unshoed disaster kick can finally cut somebody open like that. That was just a bad bleeding spot.
It was. But you know what was a great spot was when he bit the toe.
That was a great spot. And it was nice to hear a "you sick fuck" chant that didn't include Jimmy Havoc. Or Eddie Edwards.
Or Sammy.
Or Sammy, yep. So it was nice to hear the "you sick fuck" chant, but for him biting the toe, I literally looked at it and cringed, and then I was like, wait a minute. That's actually a really cool spot when you consider the fact that he went through the motions of taking the boot off and all that stuff.
You know what I just realized when we were going through that list is Marty Skrull has become mainstream because we used to get that chant when he would break the fingers, and now we don't.
No, you're right. We don't. I never caught that. Yeah, you're right.
Because I remember the first, I don't know, year that I saw him doing that move, the crowd would chant "you sick fuck."
Speaking of Marty, I don't know how much more you have on AEW. We've gone pretty much an hour on it, and I'm exhausted with it.
We haven't talked about the tag team title match yet.
Oh shit, we haven't. How have we not?
Because we were saving the best for last.
Well, that's a good point.
I danced all the way around it intentionally.
All right.
Here's the part, and now you've gone and said the F word already, but
I've said it like 3 times now.
Here's the part that I thought we're going to get the R-rated for is you and I talked about this that night, but that we watched it, but they are never going to be able to turn Hangman Page heel.
No, never.
Never's a bit of exaggeration, but it'll take a lot to do it because here it is, Hangman Page is in the ring against one of the founders of AEW, one of the most popular wrestlers in the world, the wrestler of the year in 2018, and the crowd is chanting not Hangman, not Page, but fuck him up, cowboy, fuck him up. That was goddamn amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty strong.
And I loved it. I mean, the match was just fantastic all the way around. But I mean, that spot to me was as clear of an indication as there is of who the man in that company is right now.
Well, there was so much to love about that match. Not just the match itself, but all the callbacks, everything that they did to make that match make sense. They teased so many heel turns on all their parts. The Bucks went over and above to play the heels.
Especially Matt.
Yeah. And to make Kenny... the end of the match, there were a couple of drawbacks. Like, the fact that Kenny forgave them after the way they treated him throughout the match was kind of shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
I did not, I didn't expect that. I figured Kenny would have been a little more, I don't know, standoffish, maybe.
What he did do, though, is he wasn't as adamant as he has been about, Page, trying to reconcile. He was just kind of gave like a brief gesture, like, come on. And when Page didn't, he was just like, whatever.
Right.
It wasn't like he was downhearted about it. He was a little bit downhearted about it, I think, just because he wants, his family back together. But it wasn't like he was down on Page for not accepting it. I mean. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not if Page had been willing to forget.
I'm not talking so much about Page.
Even if Page had been willing to forgive. I know, but I'm just gonna say, even if Page had been willing to forgive everything else, I think taking a indie taker on the outside from his supposed two of his supposed best friends is bullshit and should never be forgiven.
Well, it wasn't just that. His supposed 2 best friends and Kenny's supposed 2 best friends were giving cheap shots throughout the match. They were, like when Omega's standing on the edge, on the apron, they're going and knocking him off. There was a lot of situations where
you're looking at this going, well, friends don't do that to friends. They're supposed to be having this. I could have seen it a little bit more out of them if it was only against Paige because they're having issues with Paige. But the fact that it was against Omega was almost to a point where it was like, okay, how can you forgive these guys? And he kind of showed that at the end of the match where he was shrugging off Nick and shrugging off Matt, and he was like, don't touch me. And then when he finally gave in to them, he was telling them, okay, now go and congratulate Paige too, and they were ignoring him. To me, I'm watching this going, when is Kenny going to wake up? And the two of them are just going to turn on the Bucks and go off and form their own thing. Right now, I think Kenny and Page are the two most popular guys on the roster, so they're not turning heel anytime soon. But I could definitely see the Bucks doing it. But in order for the Bucks to do it, they're going to have to break away from Kenny.
The part that was the most striking to me about the Bucks and Kenny, and you didn't mention it, so I'm just going to throw it in here, is after they had hit Paige with the Indie Taker, they kind of come in and they were kind of like smiling and laughing, like, haha, we've got him right where we want him.
Right.
And just kind of like trading shots with the super kicks and just like acting like Kenny didn't even matter. That was just disgusting behavior to me. Arrogant, disgusting, wasteful. It was all the worst qualities that I think that Matt and Nick occasionally have, and throwing it all in there against their supposed best friend. I can totally see where Kenny should not have forgiven him as quickly as he did.
Yeah, that to me was just a little bit much that they were able to do that, or that Kenny was able to do that. I mean, my negatives with the match, and it's few and far between, because I felt like the match itself was great. I loved the callbacks to so many different, like Adam Page doing the fake out and then the chicken wing dance into the chicken wing, I thought was great. I loved the callback to the Golden Lovers with the golden V-trigger, and there was a lot of, and then Page doing the one-winged angel was amazing as well. So there was a lot of great about this match, but I felt like there were a couple of missteps. Like, it's only been the last couple of weeks where they've been trying to really build the dissension between Kenny and Adam Page. And I felt like they went a little overboard in the beginning when Page went to tag in Kenny and then yelled at him to get in the ring and slapped him on the shoulder instead of taking his hand. That didn't make any sense at all. I
think that led from Page being upset that Kenny was insistent about starting the match. I think Page was just like, yeah, whatever. And then when he got in there and he was doing better than Kenny, then I think that was his point, is just, you should have let me start the match in the first place.
And that's possible, and maybe I didn't.
But they settled. They settled in after that.
Yeah, it seemed out of place, and the whole buckshot lariat at the end, the teasing of the lariat on Kenny, and then holding the ropes open for him and hugging him. That just seemed like they're trying to plant seeds that aren't really there.
It's called foreshadowing and leaving your options open.
Why bother when you got your two most popular guys on the roster and people clearly are ready for the Bucks to turn heel? Mm-hmm. That crowd was against the Bucks from bell to bell.
Well, the Bucks deserved it.
Right. Oh, they did, and they've been playing the heel for the last few weeks. But I think the Bucks are better.
Well, like you said on Dynamite, when Jeff said, you were a jobber when we found you, Paige. Nick. I think that that was clearly a dick move.
I think it's funny
I think the crowd remembered that.
I think it's funny how 2.5 years in, we're still referring to Nick Jackson as Jeff Hardy.
Did I say Jeff?
Yeah, you did.
Oops.
I do it too, because they're so similar. But
that's funny.
It just, you're right, and I think maybe that's it. I think at this point they'd be better off turning the Bucks heel and then maybe someday down the line bringing Page and Omega to the Bucks as heels. But right now, you can't turn Page heel. You just can't. And Kenny Omega is probably the second most popular guy on the roster. You cannot turn these two heel at this point.
I think Hangman Page could be the Exalted One of the Dark Order, join the Inner Circle, and punt a baby into the crowd, and he would still be cheered.
I think so too.
I don't think there's anything that they could possibly do that would make him a heel right now.
He is at that Steve Austin point where Austin spouted the Austin 316 says, "I just whooped your ass." He's at that stage because of the cowboy shit promo he gave. There is nothing
that started it, but a lot of it is just also taking the beer from the crowd and going his own way. I think that you and I at the time were kind of like, wait, what do you? And in fact, I know we were kind of like, wait, what do you mean he's leaving the Elite? And I think that turned out to be the best thing for him.
Well, and we've been saying for months about how it didn't make any sense leaving the Elite because he's still popular. He still gets his wins. It just his reasoning for leaving the Elite didn't make sense. But he's proven throughout time that he doesn't need the Elite. I wouldn't even call his recent tag team with Kenny part of the Elite. I would just say that he's on his own and he's found success on his own. And the Bucks keep proving time and time again that they never respected him to begin with.
No, the Bucks are like those parents that won't let their kid cut the strings.
Right.
Whereas Page is proving the Shinedown line, sometimes goodbye is a second chance.
Yep. Exactly.
And the other thing I want to say about this match, just because I don't want to. Well, actually, there's a couple of things I want to say about it, just so I don't stray from it. Number one is it is my favorite tag team match. It's my favorite match of the year overall so far. It's my favorite tag team match since the Golden Lovers against Kazuchika Okada and Tomohiro Ishii from June of 2018.
God, that's a good match.
And when I say it's my favorite match of the year, I mean literally it's my favorite match of the year. You and I tend to, when we do our year-end awards, separate out match of the year and tag match of the year, and I think there's good reasons for that. But right now, if we did a combined list, this would be my number one match. Number two, I'm also going to address kind of the elephant in the room with the way I usually view matches, and just say that although I usually hate finisher kickouts, I thought, well, I didn't like it. I thought it worked in this match. I thought it made sense that Page had gotten his ass kicked on the apron and he'd used all of his strength he had left basically to stop Nick from hitting the Meltzer driver and powerbombing him through a table. And then, he used the very last tippy top of his strength to do the slingshot into the buckshot lariat, whereas Kenny had been almost knocked out when he hit a barely V trigger on Matt. So to me, it made sense that they were able to kick out of that. But then, the end with Page hitting back-to-back buckshot lariats on Nick and then Matt in the middle of the ring, and then pinning his antagonist for the last 6 weeks to hold on to the tag team titles was fantastic storytelling.
Yeah, I wish they would have done it without the finisher kickout because that's become one of my favorite moves in wrestling. My negatives are I can't personally, and maybe I'll have to watch it again. I don't know, but from first watch, it's not my match of the year. I felt like there were just a few too many confusing negatives that if I want to explain them, I can. But at the same point, from first viewing, it's like there's nothing that'll bug me more than a finisher kick out. And there's the whole dissension between Kenny and Page, I felt like was misguided. I see where you're coming from. The match was amazing. And if I can explain away those two missteps, then yeah, probably this would be my match of the year too. It's just for me, those two missteps are keeping it from that.
So is it probably your your third favorite tag match of the year at this point, then?
I'd say second. I think right, and a lot of it was because of all of the other things that went into it, all the callbacks. One of my favorite moments of wrestling in probably the last 5 years was watching Adam Page do that 52 fake out and then the chicken wing dance. That's one of my favorite moments in wrestling. Period. Um, I still think that the DIY versus Mustache Mountain tag match is my favorite tag match. And this is a close second. And the only reason it's close second is because I really didn't like the Page Omega foreshadowing or dissension, whatever it was. And I really, as much as the finisher kickout made sense at the time, the fact that, and I remember I actually had typed you this text, but I didn't think you would watch because you were behind me at that point. You hadn't gotten to a lot of the points. So I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to ruin it. But for me, that came across as more of a super mat, like the Tag Team Royal Rumble or the Tag Team Rumble match was. Where it's like, oh, here's Matt Jackson again, overcoming all odds and being super Matt.
Fair enough. I can see that. To me, it just felt like it was the weakest version of the. I don't remember what they're calling it, but the weakest version of their finisher that we've seen so far, and because both guys have been, completely exhausted and wiped out by that point.
And I mean, there was also that Page doing the one-winged angel. I thought was amazing. I love the Golden Lovers doing, the Young Bucks doing the Golden Lovers finisher, and then the way that Kenny kicked out of it at one and would dared them to do it again. To me, that was like, he was like, oh, hell no, you're going to slap me in the face with my own move? That's not going to happen. There was that I didn't have an issue with. I hate the finisher kick out so much that brings some points down, and I really did not like the dissension between the two, between Kenny and Page.
I get you. So you've got this number 2, and then you've got number 3 is that match from New Year's Dash then, right?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Ring of Honor.
Loved it. I loved the whole weekend.
Well, actually, no. One more. So overall, Revolution out of 5, what do you got it at?
I would say a high 3. I'm not going to give it a 5 because I had too, or even a 4 because I had too many missteps. I absolutely love the tag match, but I felt like there were a few things that kept it down for me. I hated the Jon Moxley reveal at the very end of the match, and I wanted more out of Darby and Sammy.
Yeah, I've got it probably about 3.5 out of 5.
Okay, so we're about the same. I'm 3 3/4, maybe 3.5. Okay. But those were my biggest downfalls. The women's match could have used a little more. I thought, the opening match could have used a little more. Cody versus MJF was good, but it was so far out of left field that it and then to see how the audience was just dead after the Bucks against Page and Omega, that kind of hurt, especially that women's match. They literally sat on their hands. Did they make a noise that entire match?
I don't think so.
And that's sad because those two put on a pretty decent match. So I mean, I'd give it a solid 3.5, 3 3/4.
Okay, works for me. Yeah, so Ring of Honor put together 2, as we mentioned, I think this on Tuesday, they were putting together some back-to-back nights of solid performances, and I texted Jeff on Friday night because I watched it before he did, and I just said, this has been a thoroughly enjoyable night of pro wrestling, and then we got to the main event, and that took it down a little bit, but I mean, it still couldn't ruin the show for me. I thought the show was great.
I did too. From the start, I like the feud that's going on between what are they, LFJ, LFI, and Villain Enterprises. I like the fact that everything they've done over this weekend has continued that feud.
Yep.
I thought the matches were really solid, every single one of them. Slex in the opening match was fun, and so was Marty. And then having that tag match on night 2 was great. Everybody that I saw, I enjoyed, and until of course PCO. I mean, PCO was still a downer for me, but even the Bubba Ray stuff I enjoyed. Him against Eli Isom, I thought was entertaining, a lot like the Flip Gordon from 2-3 years ago. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago now?
Bully Ray still gets the most heat of anybody in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
He's still the best heel in pro wrestling. He's great. And I love it. I love the way that they're building up to him leaving the company, but at the same time, it's going to be a sad day when he leaves the company.
Yeah, because there's not a better heel on the roster.
No, he's not really a wrestler anymore, and he's probably going to end up, he's got his podcast. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, being a WWE trainer or something like that when he leaves. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's great in his moments.
We've said it before there, and we've said it. I said it 2 weeks ago. He is probably the best heel on the mic there is, and that's you're looking at MJF, you're looking at Matt Taven. But as far as somebody grabbing an audience and just pissing them off, is there anyone better than Bully Ray? MJF
There's
is
not,
good, but MJF can't do it the way Bully Ray does.
And when you think about the fact that he used to be a stuttering guy who didn't say much at all because Joel Gertner said everything for the W's most time in ECW, you have to look back and think, man, how many missed opportunities were there in that spot?
Well, and he pissed everybody off then, too.
Yeah.
He's been pissing people off for almost 20 years. 20 plus years.
Kind of like you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Although I'm pushing more like 30, but... yeah, I mean, he had another...
Well, you're pushing 50, dude.
Not 50 years. 30 years I've been pissing people off. Unless you're saying I've been pissing them off since birth. That's a little painful. Not going to lie.
I wouldn't know, I guess.
But, no, I thought Bully gave 2 great heel performances. I felt like almost every single match, with the exception of whatever that moth thing was a good match. And even the PCO matches, I felt like Dragon Lee got a ton out of PCO, and I didn't hate the triple threat as much as I thought I was going to on night 2, but it was it was still PCO, so it was hard to watch, but I didn't hate it.
And I thought Silas Young was a complete trooper.
Oh, both
on
matches.
These shows.
Yeah, both.
He sold that knee like crazy.
He might have been the MVP of the 2 shows, to be honest. I
know.
And his tag team, that 2 guys, 1 tag, is the way Josh Woods. I felt like in night 1, Josh Woods was better. Night 2, I didn't like the fact that he got distracted the way he did. That didn't fit his character very well. But that's a great tag team. I felt like Silas Young might have been the MVP of the 2 nights because he was the highlight of 2 matches and 2 very good tag matches.
Vincent, totally agree.
Vincent was another one that I think was really had strong performances for 2 straight nights. I felt like both Gresham and Lethal, that tag team had 2 strong performances. This was just it was a great couple of nights of wrestling.
You mentioned Vincent, and I know you've been down on him turning on the Kingdom and turning on Taven, and I think a lot of it was just because they came out of nowhere. But seeing him with his stable, the Righteous, kind of makes me want to go back and watch some Ring of Honor television to see what the hell I missed with those guys.
Right, exactly.
See what they're all about. See what the other 2 members of the stable do, if anything. All that kind of stuff.
Well, Chuckles and what's her name? I was thinking that too. It'd be I want to see where they all came from, because it feels like we've missed something, and I hate feeling like we've missed something. But I was down on the whole turn on the Kingdom because it turned
it turned Taven face. And I felt like Taven was such a great heel that turning him face was a bad idea. But seeing where the Righteous is coming in and everything, I want to see that. I literally want to see. It's really making me interested in Ring of Honor again this last 2 nights. And I don't know if that's Marty's booking that's doing it, or if they've just kind of turned the corner a little bit. They've got some really good wrestlers. I just felt like they mismanaged the top of the card and maybe weren't putting the best matches together they could have. But the tag team division is really solid. I like Hendry and Castle together. I like 2 guys 1 tag. I like the Righteous. Not sure what to think about Brian Johnson and PJ Black yet, but I like pretty much everything else going on in the tag division, and the singles matches were actually really good as well.
Speaking of the tag team division, one team you didn't mention was Jeff Cobb and Dan Moff, and I know when those guys had a match, I can't remember if it was Final Battle or Death Before Dishonor, but I remember we watched and we're kind of like, what the hell was that guy?
Right, exactly.
And now, they were great as a tag team against the Briscoes, and I thought Moff was great the next night against Alex Shelley too.
Yep, I did too.
So so I think Moff is really is kind of like shaking off some of that rust he had from being off there so long.
Well, and you look at Kenny King now with LFJ or LFI, whatever, what are they?
Los Facción Ingobernable.
So LFI. If you look at him with LFI, it was a long game that they played with the speaking Spanish and all that stuff. That paid off really, really well. He fits with those two perfectly. And they've kind of, because they were faces, and Dragon Lee still kind of is, but at the same point, what Kenny King was doing for months before then fits with that faction perfectly. With the cocky attitude and the, you start to see more of it now when you see that they're together with Roosh and the way he's been acting since day one in the company. And then Dragon Lee has that cocky attitude too. It's just, those three fit really good together.
Well, the other thing is that I think Los Ingobernables de Japón and even the original Los Ingobernables in CMLL work much better as anti-heroes or tweeners than they do as straight heels anyway.
Right.
So, and you and I have been big fans of Kenny King for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that the writing was kind of on the wall that he was never going to be a top guy in Ring of Honor as much as we wanted him to be. So I think him being a part of a top faction is probably the best we're going to get from him, and so I'm pretty happy that that's the case now.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree.
Yeah, so I enjoy that faction. It looks like Lifeblood has been reduced to 2 members, which is cool. That's still a good tag team. I think Tracy Williams looks a lot better now that he took that stupid brace he was wearing for years off.
Oh, the KT tape.
No, he used to wear that sling. Remember?
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. He's not a bad performer. I've just never seen anything overly special that separates him.
Right.
I hope that someday I do. I think he's better as a tag team, but you're right. Lifeblood went from being this amazing faction that was going to turn around Ring of Honor to 2 guys. And that's it. 2 guys.
And since we stopped watching 2 months ago, 3 new stables have formed. The Righteous, La Facciones Ingobernable, and Mexa Squad.
Yeah.
So.
But they'd kind of formed, but they weren't a full stable because it was just Bandito and Rey Horus. Or no, the other guy.
No, it was Bandito and Flamita.
Flamita, yeah, as a tag team.
It was Bandito and Flamita.
And then Rey Horus.
Because Horus was still in MLW at the time.
Right. So he came over and joined them too, just to win the 3-man tag.
Yeah. I'd love to see Airwolf come in there and join one of those factions.
I would love to see Airwolf in Ring of Honor. I would love to see Airwolf anywhere again, just so I can see Airwolf again.
Right. Yeah. These shows, I know we're not going into detail about a lot of the stuff that happened here, but one great thing that happened we didn't mention, I don't think, is that PCO is no longer the world champion.
Thank God. I couldn't. It took everything in my power to watch that match. Because after seeing him the night before in a singles match, I just couldn't do it.
Right, and now Rush is the 5th ever 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that,
I am too.
And I'm okay with the fact that at what was it, 18th anniversary, we get him against Mark Haskins.
Right.
And not another PCO match.
And something you mentioned earlier you touched on and we didn't actually talk about. I can't even remember if you talked about on the show or if it was like right before we went on air, but Flip Gordon.
Oh yeah, he had a hell of a weekend too. He was solid in his performances, not just in the ring, but his just character development throughout the entire weekend was nails. I really loved what I saw of him.
Yeah, you mentioned it, but I had noticed that same thing watching it. Is Flip Gordon is so much better performer. A year and I loved his performance at Final Battle, and 2018, and I loved his performance at Supercard at G1 Supercard last year too. But I mean, he's such a different, better, more experienced, better character performer now than he was at that time. He really grew into his own, I think, as a member of Villain Enterprises.
Well, I think he's another one of those guys that just flourishes once they get out of that vanilla babyface mantra that they're in. Because he was stuck in that, and especially in his role against, he started to show some of his toughness against Bully Ray, but he was still that babyface, vanilla babyface number 4. Once he joined Villain Enterprises and came back from his injury, he's been able to actually develop a character, and he's a compelling character. He's really good at what he does, and you're starting to see that now.
Yeah, I think that, well, at least I felt, and I think that you were kind of along the same lines as me, is that he joined Villain Enterprises, became the mercenary there. And with the idea that possibly Marty was going to leave and Flip would become the leader of that faction, and now Marty's sticking around, and he just keeps getting better and better. And now he's got a world title shot in his back pocket, which makes a lot more sense now that PCO is no longer the world champion.
Especially considering LFI and Villain Enterprises are the two factions feuding.
Right. So now. It was announced on Friday night that PCO's match for Supercard of Honor on April 4th, I believe it is against Nick Aldis, and Aldis made it clear he wanted it to be for the NWA World Championship. And now we'll probably get Rush versus, Marty's already involved with Jay White, so we'll probably end up getting Flip Gordon versus Rush at Supercard of Honor, which is a pretty damn cool main event.
Yeah. The thing that bugs me is, Aldis was saying,
and actually, I'm sorry, don't try to interrupt you, but I should say that also leaves open the possibility of Brody King facing Dragon Lee for the television title.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that at all.
No, me neither.
The thing about Aldis though, spouting on Friday night about how he wanted it title for title, and then going out and costing PCO the title, was a little bit frustrating.
I think he said that before though PCO kept kicked out of everything, and he realized what a force PCO was. So I think it makes sense for him to do what he can to weaken him before their match against each other.
I cannot believe that he's a force. That I just can't buy into that. I don't like it.
But everybody else is selling it, so we have to try to buy into the fiction as much as possible.
I don't need to. It sucks.
Speaking of Aldis, there was 3 great moments. Two from Aldis on guest commentary this weekend on Ring of Honor. One of them from Aldis was when PCO went to grab Dragon Lee by his short tights and accidentally gave him a wedgie. and Aldis said, "I used that move in high school."
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
The second was when I think it was PCO again did a suicide dive to the outside, missed and hit his head, and Aldis said, "That's or Charles Darwin would have been proud of that move."
Did you catch, and speaking of suicide dives, did you catch when during the Cody match when JR goes, and of course Cody's going to have to dive now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was afraid I was the only. I was afraid you didn't catch that because we didn't comment on it. But I love the fact that JR gets so pissed off about the suicide dives. I don't know why, but it makes me happy every time he does.
And there was a point in the AEW show. I'll get back to what the third commentary thing was in a minute because I'm not sure if Jeff caught it or not. But I want to share it to all you guys, even if he did. But Jim Ross was very good, I thought, on Saturday night. The only part that kind of got to me was when he was talking about how saying something about he said there was like a brief moment where he and Tony were talking about Twitter, and he said, "God forbid you mispronounce somebody's name." That means you don't love you don't love the product as much as I do. Well, I kind of feel the same way, Jim. I feel like you wouldn't be mispronouncing all these guys' names if you were doing your job and paying attention. But you didn't do that on Saturday night, so you did a great job.
So, yeah, I enjoyed their broadcast on Saturday night. I felt like Excalibur made more mistakes than JR and Tony did.
I think he did too. Yeah. The third bit of commentary that I loved, guest commentary from Ring of Honor, happened on the second night when Beer City Bruiser and Brawler Malonis had joined them for commentary during the Session Martina versus Angelina Love match, where there was a beer can sitting in the corner that Moth had brought to the ringside with her.
Oh, he's gonna take him in. Yeah, I love that.
And Beer City Bruiser said, "You got to get if she can hear me. She's got to get to the can. That's where all the power is." And Caprice Coleman said, "Like spinach?" And Beer City Bruiser goes, "Yeah. What's spinach?"
Yeah, I completely missed that because I was focused on them talking about the can as a tag team, as a tag match. So I completely missed that. But that's a really
I thought
funny
it was great
line.
I thought it was great that Beer City Bruiser didn't know what spinach was.
Yeah, it's a really.
But agreed at the
line.
same time. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. This was a very, very solid weekend of wrestling, and I was a little worried about AEW because of the build-up show, but it turned out to be a really solid 3 shows over the weekend, and I'm glad that I caught all 3 shows.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen any of the 3 of them, I would recommend watching all of them and almost everything on all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, even the world title match between PCO and Dragon Lee had some great Dragon Lee stuff in it, and that amazing commentary by Nick Aldis. So
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at all 3 of none of them were. I don't think any of them were must-watch shows. Like, I wouldn't give any of them 4-star ratings or say any of the matches on any of them were 5-star ratings outside of that tag match with the Bucks and Omega, and even that I'm giving it more like a 4 3/4. But I think the whole
I would probably give Moff and I would say probably the highest rating I've given any of the matches is probably Moff and Cobb versus the Briscoes from the Ring of Honor shows, and that's probably 4.5.
That was a solid show. I don't know. I think you can't. I mean, that tag match with the Bucks and Omega Page had so many strong moments. That to me, that's definitely 4 3/4. So I think that might be my highest of the weekend, and then probably that tag match with Moff and Cobb versus the Briscoes, probably second.
Yeah.
I really loved the triple threat that opened that Friday night show with Slex, Marty, and Jesus, who's the third guy in that?
Bandito.
Yeah, I thought that was a solid match. I loved the tag match between Villain Enterprises and LIJ or LFI that ended in the brawl. I thought that was a solid match. I think there were a lot of solid matches from the weekend,
But I think all in all, this might have been my favorite weekend of wrestling since Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, it was a fantastic weekend of wrestling. I'm very happy with it. But that leaves us shy for this week. For those of you who haven't heard, New Japan Pro Wrestling had to postpone, or maybe cancel. Who knows what's going to happen. Their New Japan Cup matches that were scheduled for this weekend next. So there won't be a New Japan show until at least March 15th due to recommendations from Japan's health department. So we have no New Japan to cover this week like we were planning on. So I'm guessing next week's show we're probably going to be doing a preview for Ring of Honor's second biggest show of the year, their anniversary show next Friday.
Which, ironically, I'm actually looking forward to again, which I never thought I was going to say after that horrible display of Final Battle.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the rundown right now because we'll do it on Tuesday with our next night, but it'll be an all Ring of Honor night, I think, for us. Unless we have New Japan Cup matches to count down as well. But the Ring of Honor show anniversary show looks great, and we'll also be covering Supercard of Honor for our Patreon show that night as well.
Yeah, from 2011, which looks to be another solid show. We're going to be doing that next week. This week we're not, because we knew it was going to be a long weekend of wrestling, and it turned into a longer show than normal. So we're not doing our Patreon show tonight. We'll do that next week. And you can get all of our Patreon stuff, including our archives and all of the specials that we've done for Patreon and YouTube on patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. If you go there, you're going to find the link to our YouTube page. Make sure that you head there because we do this live twice a week on YouTube, and then one monthly special as well on youtube.com/Kingdom of Honor. And of course our Twitter, which is at ZanmanLOP and at Regi Co-op, and you can get us by using the hashtag DAD and the hashtag KOH.
And normally you get us twice a week on LOP Radio. I'm not sure how it's going to work tomorrow night, though. Tomorrow night is my birthday. I'm turning 45 tomorrow.
Old man.
And and I'm not sure what time I'm going to be home. So I'll probably be home in time to do our show, but whether I'm home in time to see much or any of Dynamite, I have no idea. So we'll have to play it by ear for tomorrow. See how it goes. So.
Right. So.
And then go ahead.
I was going to say, what else is coming up on LordsOfPainRadio.net?
On Thursday. I'm glad you asked, Jeff. On Thursday, we have Ibs LOP Radio Adventure. I'm sure we'll be talking more about Revolution, probably about some of the WWE crap going on. On Friday, we have NWA The Legacy Series. And then again, we'll be back with you next Tuesday talking about more Ring of Honor.
Yes.
That's all we've got.
Woo-hoo.
We'll try to do better next time. This is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights. And Jeff saying
goodbye.